Hey guys, Hannah1 here. Welcome to day 1 of the 12 Days of Scratchmas, where each day I am going to be showing you how to make a super simple Christmas themed minigame in Scratch. For day 1 we're going to be making a game called Snowman Swap, where you are given an example snowman, which then hides, and you then have to replicate the design of the snowman on your own version. And if you get it right, then you get a point. If not, the game ends. But before we jump into that, I do need you to do one thing. I need you to go down into the description and click the link to the blank template project. This has a bunch of the code for the main menu and some UI elements and stuff like that. And we will be using this for all 12 days of the Scratchmas challenge. So it's all going to be kept in one neat project and it's going to be super fun. But other than that, once you've got your blank project, let's dive right in. Okay, so once you have your blank project, we're going to go over to the Game Sprite 1 sprite, and we're going to go to the When I Receive Game Start function. This will happen as soon as you hit the play button to start the Snowman Swap game, and we need to fill in the if game is equal to 1 section of this. So the first thing we're going to do is go to variables, and then we're going to set game state to 0, and we're going to set countdown to 3. We're then going to go to the control tab and add in a repeat loop. We need this to repeat 3 times. Then we're going to drag in a wait 1 second block, and then we are going to change countdown by -1. Then we're going to copy everything that is in this, and we're going to change set game state block to be set game state to 1, and we're going to set countdown to 5, and we're going to change the number of repeats in the second loop to be repeat 5 times. Then we're going to go down to the my block section, then we're going to drag in a start game 1 time block, and we're going to set the time to be 10. So what this is going to do is when you hit start, there'll be 3 seconds where nothing really happens, just so you can orient yourself and doesn't throw straight in. And then it's going to show you the example snowman for 5 seconds, and then the game will start. We're now going to scroll down and find the define function for the clone block, and again we're filling in the game is equal to 1 section. So we're going to go to variables and drag in a set variable block. We need to set this value, or this val, to 0. Then we need a go to block. We want to set the values to be go to 0, 100. And we also need a switch costume to block, and we're going to switch costume to correct and drag that into there. And then we are going to create clone of myself. We then need another set this val block, and we're going to set this val to 1. And we're going to set another variable. We're going to set this type to be body. I'm going to drag both of these blocks into here. I'm going to just copy this and then remove those last 2 blocks from it. So we have the switch costume to block, which you want to set costume to be body 1. And we're going to go to -100 for the X value, and for the Y, we are going to -70. And then we can just drag that in. And we're going to copy everything from the set this type to body block. So we have all 4 of these blocks. And now we want to set this type to be head. And we're going to switch costume to head 1, and we're going to keep the X value the same, but the Y we want to be 6. And we can just drag that in, and we're going to copy that all of those 4 blocks again, and this time we're going to set it to be hat, switching to hat 1, and for the Y value of this one we want it to be 30. We're then going to copy everything from the set this value to 1 block, so we have all of these. And now we're going to change it to be set this val to 2. And basically anywhere where we have the X value -100, we're just going to change it to be +100. Just like this. Nice and easy, and just drag that in afterwards. Now we need to go down to the lists section of this code here. And we're going to drag in a delete all of game info 1 block. Just duplicate that, and also have a delete all of game info 2 block, and drag both of those in. Then we're going to do an add thing to game info 1, and we're going to set this to be pick random 1 to 9. And then we are going to add 1 to game info 2, duplicate those 2 blocks, and change the second pick random number to 6. So it's pick random 1 to 6 to game info 1, and then add 1 to game info 2. Duplicate those 2 blocks again, this time setting it to be pick random 1 to 11. And just add those in. And that's everything we need for the clone script. So as you can see, we have 2 snowmen appearing. And now we need to go to the when I start as a clone script. And again, we're filling in the if game is equal to 1 section. So the first thing we're going to do is drag in an if-else statement into that. And we're going to then drag in an equals operator into the condition space. And we're going to set it to be if this val is equal to 0. And then we're going to drag another if-else control block into the if portion of that and set it to be if game state is equal to 3. And then we're going to just have it say switch costume to correct and show. Then we're going to duplicate the if game state is equal to 3 if else function and set it to be if game state is equal to 4. Put that into the else portion and change the switch costume block to be switch costume to incorrect. And then in the else portion of that, just hide. And this will just give us some UI to show whether or not you correctly matched this 2 snowmen or not. So then into the empty else portion we have here, we're going to drag in another if-else function. And we're going to set the condition of this to be if this val is equal to 1. Then we're going to drag another if-else function into the if portion of that. And we're going to drag an or operator into the condition space. We want one side to be if game state is equal to 0, or if game state is equal to 2. Then we're going to switch costume. Just drag that into the if portion. And then we're going to add a join operator into that. And set the join operator to be join the variable this type and a question mark. Then in the else portion, we're going to add another if-else function and set it to be if this type is equal to hat. Then we can switch costume. Again, we need a join operator. So we switch costume to join hat. And then we want to go down to the variables tab and find item 1 of game info 1. We can duplicate this if-else function and drag that into the else portion. Set it to be if this type is equal to head, and then set it to be switch costume to join head item 2 of game info 1. And else we want to switch it to join body item 3 of game info 1. This just means that the first snowman will either be hidden in certain game states, and in other game states will display the snowman that is dictated by the first game info list. And then in the final empty else function, we want to add in an if else function. We're just going to copy this if game state is equal to 0 or game state is equal to 2 condition and change the second one to be if game state is equal to 1 instead of 2. And then we're going to switch costume to join this type question mark. We can just copy that from the other code section. So we're going to just copy this entire if else function if this type is equal to section. And then just anywhere where we have game info 1, we're just going to switch that over to be game info number 2. And I also want to give the players some feedback when they mouse over it when they are able to click the snowman. So we're just going to drag in another if else function, and we're going to set the condition to be if touching mouse pointer, which is under the sensing tab. And we also actually want to put this into the one side of an AND operator, and for the other side we're going to set this to be if game state is equal to 2. And in this case we're going to drag in a set size 2 block, and we want this to be 103. So it's only going to grow a very tiny bit, so it's not much of a difference. But we're also going to set the brightness effect of this to be 10. We can then copy these two, and for the else portion we just want it to be set size to 100 and set brightness effect to be 0. So we can just add that in. And I'm just going to drag it into the else function just above this if else function we already have in there. So now the clone for the other snowman will also display the correct costume. We need to be able to switch between the different snowmen costumes for the second sprite. So we're going to scroll until we find the when this sprite is clicked script. And for this section, we're going to drag in an if function without the else one, so just a regular if function. For this one, what we're going to do is we're going to drag in an and operator, and we're going to set one side to be if this val is equal to 2, and if game state is also equal to 2, which means you're in a state where you're able to select the different costumes. And in this portion, we need an if else function with the condition if this type is equal to hat. Then we're in the if portion of that, we're going to add another if else function with the condition being if item 1 of game info 1, so you need to go down to the variable section, drag in an item 1 of game info 1, and if that is equal to 9, then we're going to replace item 1 of game info with 1. Else, we want to replace item 1 of game info 1, go to the operators and drag in an addition operator. And set that to be item 1 of game info 1 plus 1. We can then duplicate this entire if else statement and change it to be if this type is equal to head. Actually, this should always be game info 2, sorry. So we need to change anywhere I have game info 1 to be game info 2. That was my mistake. So yeah, we need it to be if item 2 of game info 2 for the head section. So anywhere I have item 1, change it to be item 2. And for the if portion, we need it to be if it's equal to 6 instead of 9. Then we can copy this if else function from this section, drag it into the empty else section, change all of the if item 2 of game info 2 to be item 3, and then we can change the condition to be if it's equal to 11, and this will allow us to cycle through all of the different costumes and like variations for the different parts of the snowmen. And we also need to go all the way up to the top where you'll find this define start game 1 time script, and then under this what we need to do is set game state to be 2 and set countdown to be time. Then we're going to add a repeat loop, repeating time seconds, wait 1 second, then change countdown by -1, just like we did it in that first script earlier, if you remember that. Then we need an if else function, and we need this to be if game info 1 is equal to game info 2. So if all of the items in game info 1 are the same as in game info 2, then what will happen is we want to change score by 1. We want to set the game state to be 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag in a delete all of game info 1 block, and then add thing to game info 1. We need this to be pick random 1 to 9. Duplicate that, add pick random 1 to 6, and pick random 1 to 11. Then we're just going to copy all of this and remove the final if else function and just drag that in underneath. We want to set game state to 1, set countdown to 5, and repeat 5 times. And then we are going to start game 1 time 10. And if you wanted to change how long the player has, like for each round, like to make it easier or harder, all you have to do is change the time in the time section. So if you want to give the player a little bit longer, you can set time to say 15 or 20. If you want to make it really, really difficult, you could decrease it to be like 4 or 5. And if you really wanted a challenge, what you could do is have it be that the higher the player's score gets, the less time they have. So you could try doing something like that if you want a bit of an extra challenge. But for this empty else function we have here, all we need to do for this is set game state to 4. Then we're going to wait 3 seconds. Then we're going to set game to none, so just the word none, and we are going to broadcast main menu. This will just end the game if the player gets the challenge incorrect. A little mistake, we need to remove the show block and put it before the forever loop. I don't know how it wound up in there. And I misspelled body, that's another mistake I need to make. I also forgot that we need a wait 3 seconds block before the delete all of game info 1 block in this section. Just a few mistakes I made whilst coding this, sorry. So now we should be able to test it and have a fully functioning game. So let's see, we have the green bobble hat, the smiley face and the blank body. We have the green body. Keep missing it now. Green bobble hat. Oh, didn't quite have time to do it, but you can see that like this is all functioning. So if you try again, see if I can get it right this time. So we have the blue top hat, the orange scarf, and the face with the round nose. So this should be correct, I believe, if my memory serves. Yeah, we got it right, and we get a point, and it has a brief second, and then it starts over again. So you can see that this is working. So what we're going to do now is quickly add in a few sound effects. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a correct sound effect into the under the start game 1 time section. In the if game info 1 is equal to game info 2 section, we're going to start sound correct, and then in the else portion we can start sound incorrect. And then if we go down to the when this sprite is clicked script, we can just quickly add in a page 1 sound in the if this value is equal to 2 and game state is equal to 2 section. And that's just a couple basic sound effects to make the entire thing feel a bit more responsive and alive, and I think that really helps bring everything together. Hey guys, HannahMouse1 here. Welcome to day 2 of the 12 Days of Scratchmas challenge, where every day I show you how to make a super simple Christmas themed minigame in Scratch. For day 2, we're going to be making the game Gift Shift, where you are shown a gift and you have to put it into the correct sack based on which gift is depicted. This video is assuming that you have completed part 1, so all of the code from part 1 is already in here, and I highly recommend that you do check out that part first and complete day 1 before moving on to day 2. But assuming you've already done that, let's dive right in. So let's go back to our game sprite 1, and now we need to go to the when I receive game start script, just like we did yesterday. But today we are filling in the game is equal to 2 section. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually go back up to the game is equal to 1 section and just duplicate the whole thing that's inside. And then we're just going to remove this final start game 1 time block and just drag this straight into the game is equal to 2 section. This is because mechanically this is very similar to the first game. So it starts, there's a pause, and then the game starts proper. So what we're going to do is change this second set countdown 2 block to be set countdown to 20. Because we need a nice long timer for this one. And then we're going to do a repeat until countdown is equal to 0 for the condition. So we need an equals operator with the one side being 0 and the other side being countdown, just like so. And then after that, we're going to set game state to 2. Then we're going to wait 3 seconds. Then we're going to set game to none, and we're going to broadcast main menu. And this little set, these 2 blocks here, you may remember from yesterday, just end the game and take you back to the main menu. Works exactly the same. So what this section of the code does is starts the game, there's a pause, the game runs a cycle, and then once the timer runs out, it just sends you straight back to the main menu after a couple seconds. So now we can find and move on to the clone define script. So we're going to scroll down to that and fill in the set game, the game is equal to 2 section of that. So first we need a go to block, and we need to go to x 0, y 30. Then we want to set this type to be gift. So set this type gift, if I can spell. And then we want to switch costume to gift 1. Like like so, and create clone of myself. Then we can just copy these 4 blocks and we can set this type to be sack, and we can switch costume to be sack 1. For the X, we want it to go to X minus 162, and the Y, we want it to be negative 55, and then we also want to set this val to be 1 right before the create clone of myself block. And for that create clone of myself block, we're going to drag it into a repeat loop, with it being set to repeat 6 times. In this loop, we also want to change this val by 1. And we also want to change X by, we need to change that by 65. You just drag that in. Then we can just duplicate this, and we can remove the set this type block and the switch costume block. So we have the go to, the set this val, and then the repeat loop. And then we just want to change the Y value from minus 55 to minus 120. And we also want to remove the set this val block. So we just have the go to block and then the repeat loop, and then we can just drag that in. So now if we go on to the game, you can see that we have all of the gifts and the sacks nicely laid out. And something a little mistake I made earlier. Back up at the when I receive game start block, we want to change this, switch out this repeat loop for a repeat until loop. So you have repeat until countdown is equal to 0 instead of just repeat countdown is equal to 0. Slight oversight on my part, I am so sorry. Just quickly change that, and now you can see that the countdown will actually work as it's supposed to, and you test the game. Oh, and another thing we need to do in this if game is equal to 2 block while we're here, at the very start we're going to drag in a set variable 1 block and just drag that in at the beginning, and we want this to be set to pick random 1 to 12. This will just dictate which of the presents is the first one to be given to the player. Scrolling down now to the when I start as a clone script. So for this one, what we need to do right off the bat is drag in an if-else function into the if portion, with the condition being if this type is equal to sack, then we can switch costume to join from the operators tab. We need this to be sack this val. And then to just give them a nice little mouse over effect, we're going to drag in an if-else function. If touching mouse pointer looks set size to be 105, else set size to 100. And we want another if-else function. We're going to drag this in after the if touching mouse pointer one. And then we want to set if game state is equal to 1. In that case, we're going to set brightness effect to 0. Else, we're going to set brightness effect to negative 25. This just means that when you can't click them because the game's still in its loading state, it looks like you can't click them. It just adds a bit more visual feedback for the player so that they're not like, oh, why can't I click these yet? It just helps. Then in the else portion, we're going to drag in an if function with the condition if this type is equal to gift. Again, if I could spell, that would be very helpful. What's wrong with me today? There we go. If this type is equal to gift, then we're going to take the if game state is equal to 1 function, just duplicate that and change it to be if game state is equal to 0. We can remove the brightness blocks. In the if portion, we're going to hide, else we will show. Then we're just going to duplicate this again. If game state is equal to 1, we will switch costume to join gift and variable 1. Else, we will switch costume to, scrolling down until you find the time costume, which is here somewhere. I know it's here somewhere. Oh, there we are. Switch costume to time. Drag that in. So now you can see that we have the countdown, we have all of the grayed out sacks, and then the first gift appears. You just quickly scroll down to the when this sprite is clicked script, which we have. Quickly scroll down here we are. When this sprite is clicked, if game is equal to 2. So what we want in here is an if function, and we're going to drag an AND operator into the condition space of that. Into one side we're going to, if this type is equal to sac, and for the other side we want it to be if game state is equal to 1. Then we're going to add an if function into that, and we're going to drag an equals operator in, and we want this to be if this val is equal to variable 1. Then we want to change score by 1. Then we're going to add in a repeat until loop, and then set the operator to be not. And we can copy paste in that this val is equal to variable 1, and we can set variable 1 to be pick random 1 to 12. This just means that you can't get the same one twice in a row, which feels a bit janky. It's always nice for it to be a different one, so you have to look around for it. It feels good. So this then resets that. So let's give this a quick play test then, shall we? So we have the initial countdown, and then we have, okay, so it's this one, then it's this one, that's the orange round one, then the green round one again, the green with the pink bow, the red with the green bow, and so on and so forth. 9, 8, 7, around a few seconds. You can see, and then it says time's up, a few seconds, and then kicks you back to the main menu. So all we need to do now is add in a few sound effects. So while we're on this when the sprite is clicked script, we're going to add a correct sound to the into the if this val is equal to variable 1 if function. And then we're going to scroll back up to the game start section. And then when it sets game state to 2, we're just going to start sound incorrect, just to have a dun, just time's up. Oh. And that's all we need for that. Hey guys, Hannah Mouse1 here. Welcome to day 3 of the 12 Days of Scratchmas challenge, where I show you how to make a simple Christmas themed minigame every day for 12 days leading up to Christmas. For day 3 we're going to be making a simple Christmassy snap game called Merry Match. And this video is assuming that you have already completed parts 1 and 2, so we will be continuing in the same project, so make sure you've done both of those. It is linked down below if you haven't quite caught up with the series just yet, but if you have, let's dive right in. Okay, so in our game sprite 1, under the when I receive game start script, we're just going to duplicate everything in the if game is equal to 2 section. We're going to change the set variable 1 block from pick random to simply be none. And we're also going to set variable 2 to be none. But apart from that, we can keep it all the same, so we can just drag that into the if game is equal to 3 section, and that was really easy. So like yesterday, it just starts the game, gives you 3 seconds grace period, and then has a 20-second runtime for the actual game itself. But this time it just sets the 2 variables, which will be used to dictate which cards are flipped. But apart from that, let's go straight to the clone script, the clone defined script, if we scroll right down to that. And then what we need in here is to set this type to card. We're also going to switch costume to be card. We're going to set Y from the motion blocks. We're going to set Y to be 30. We also want to set this val to be 1. And then after that, we're going to drag in a repeat loop with it repeating 3 times. Again, from the motions, we're going to set X within this loop to be -84. Then we need another repeat loop with it repeating 4 times. Within this loop, we want to create clone of myself. We want to change this val by 1. And then we want to change X by 56. Then after the repeat loop, we're going to change Y by -76, which, as you'll see, will cause the cards to display. Then after the repeat 3 times loop, so the very end of this section, we want the reset custom block. Speaking of the reset custom block, let us find the define script for that. And within this, we want to delete all of both game info 1 and game info 2. Quickly do that, just drag that in. Then we need a repeat loop with it repeating 2 times. And we're going to add 1 into game info 1. So repeat twice, add 1 to game info 1. Then we're going to duplicate this repeat loop, and then we're going to remove this. We're going to then add in an insert thing at 1 of game info 1. We need to insert 2 at, then we need a pick random block, like we used for the snowmen costumes in the first episode. We need another pick random block. We wanted to pick random, and then 1, 2, and then we need an addition operator. We needed it to be pick random 1 to length of game info 1 plus 1. We're going to duplicate this and insert 3 instead. We're going to do the same thing for 4, 5, and 6. So quickly so we need 5 of these blocks in total, all in there. And this will just shuffle the cards. And that's all we need for the reset script. So now we can go to the when I start as a clone script for this one. And this one's super simple. We just need an if else function into here. Then we need an or operator and another one. We'll drag that into one side. So we need this to be if variable 1 is equal to this value, or variable 2 is equal to this val, or game info 2 contains this value, then we are going to switch costume 2, join card, and then for the other side of the join operator, we want item this value of game info 1. Else, we're going to switch costume to card. That's all we need for that. Now let's go down to the when this sprite is clicked script. So right off the bat, we need an if function, with it being if game state is equal to 1. And then we're going to drag another if function into that, with the condition, it's the same one that we used for the costume ones earlier, so we need 2 or operators, where it's this val is equal to variable 1, this val is equal to variable 2, or if game info 2 contains this val. And then into that we need an if else function. The condition of this needs to be if variable 1 is equal to none. So we just set that. And in this case we're just going to set variable 1 to be this. Right, and just need to check that this should actually be this entire condition should be in a not operator, sorry, so it should be not this value is equal to variable 1 or this value, so on. So it should always be not just those values. So then we're going to duplicate this if else function with the variable 1 is equal to none thing, and we're going to set it to be variable 2 is equal to none. In this case we will set this variable 2 to be this val, and then we need to add an if else function into that. The condition of this, we need an equals operator, with it being if item variable 1 of game info 1 is equal to item variable 2 of game info 1. In this case we want to change score by 1. We want to add thing. So what we need to do is add variable 1 to game info 2, and we need to add variable 2 to game info 2, and then we need another if function, and we need the condition of this to be if length of game info 2 is equal to 12. We will wait 1 second, change score by 10. Change countdown by 10. And then drag in the reset custom block. In the else portion, we want to wait 1 second. Then after this loop, we want to set variable 1 and variable 2 to be none. And actually we can move this entire section, so the if variable 2 is equal to none, we can actually move this into an if loop instead of an if else loop. We don't actually need anything in the else function of that. We have a functioning match game. As you can see, it all works hunky-dory. And when if you complete the board, it gives you some extra score, it increases your time and resets the board. So as you can see, the cards are all in different places now. So let's quickly just add in some sound effects. So under the when this sprite is clicked script, all we're going to do is add a page 1 sound into the if variable 1 is equal to none section, and in the if variable 2 is equal to none section, and in the if item variable 1 of game info 1 section, we're just going to add start sound correct. Hey, Hannah1 here, welcome to day 4 of the 12 Days of Scrachmas challenge, where I show you how to make a different Christmas themed Scratch minigame every day for the 12 days leading up to Christmas. For day 4, we're going to be making the game called On Ice, where you have to guide a Santa character around an ice rink whilst collecting gifts, and the challenge is the momentum of the character makes that a little bit tricky. And I am of course assuming that you have completed days 1, 2, 3 up till now. It's all kept in one project, so I highly recommend that you do check those out first before diving into this one. The link to those is down in the description below. But apart from that, let's jump right in to the coding. Alright, so back in our Game Sprite 1, as always, we're going to start with our When I Receive Game Start script. So just scroll until you find that. So I'm just going to, like we've done the other day, just copy everything we have in the if game is equal to 3 section and just remove the set variable 2 block. We're going to change the set variable 1 to change it to be 0. So we want to set variable 1 to 0. But apart from that, we can keep everything exactly the same. So we can just drag that into the if game is equal to 4 section, and that's super simple because it's very similar to what we did the other day. But let's move on to the clone define script. So scroll down until you find that, and we need to find the if game is equal to 4 section. What we want to do is set this type to rink. Drag that in. Then we're going to switch costume to rink. Find that costume. Okay, so we can switch costume to rink. And we want to go to 0, -50. Why? And then create clone of myself. Then we can just copy all of this and change it to be set this type to skater. Switch costume to skater. I want to then remove that. We just can create clone of myself. We can drag that in. And finally, we're going to create clone of Game Sprite 2, which we'll be coding in just a second. So as you can see, if we go onto On Ice and click, we now have the rink, and up here is Game Sprite 2, which, like I said, we'll just code it in a minute. But before we do that, let's go up to the When I Start as a clone script. In the if game is equal to 4 section, we need an if function. And we want the condition to be if this type is equal to skater. And within this we want an if else function with the condition if game state is equal to 0. Just like that. In the if portion we are going to point in direction 0. Then we want to duplicate this, and if game state is equal to 1, we want to point in direction, we want to point towards mouse pointer, sorry. Else, we're going to move variable 1 steps, and then we're going to set variable 1 to variable 1 operators. We're going to times variable 1, I didn't really mean to show that variable, let's quickly hide that again. Variable 1 times 0.95. So variable 1 is going to be the momentum of the character, so whichever direction you're moving in, that's how fast you're moving. And all this does is make it so that if there's no further movement input, your character just slowly glides to a halt like they're sliding on ice. It's like it adds momentum, but does bring your character slowly to a halt. Then we're going to add in an if function, with the condition being we need a less than operator for the condition, and we need it to be if x position is less than negative 132, and in this case we are going to set x to negative 132. We need another if operator, and this time we need it to be if x is greater than positive 132. Then we can set x to 132, and within both of these we need to set variable 1 to be 0, so if you hit the edge of the rink then all your momentum is lost. So drag that into both of those. We can duplicate this and attach it to the bottom. Change both of the x position ones to be y positions. Then we need it to be if y is less than negative 133. And for this one, so then we need to set y to negative 133. Then if y is greater than 35, then we need to set y to 35. So we can drag that in after the set variable 1, 2 block. And then at the end of this, after all of that, we need another if function. So after this, if variable 1 is equal to 35, which is after that, we need a less than operator in there with 1 in the right hand side. And for this we're going to take the absolute value operator, which just basically means how big the number is in either the negative or positive direction. So the absolute value of 5 is 5, the absolute value of minus 5 is also 5. So however far from 0 the number is basically. So we need this to be the absolute value of, variable 1, and if it's less than 1, we'll set variable 1 to be 0. And quick correction, we need actually all of this to, everything from this type is equal to skater should actually be in an if-else function, not an if function. That was my mistake. So let's quickly just switch that over. Then we can add the if function into the else portion. Just quickly clean this up. And then we can set the condition to be if this type is equal to rink. So then we need an if function in that with an and operator in the condition space and an and operator in one side of that. So we have 3 conditions for this. So we need it to be if touching mouse pointer and mouse down and game state is equal to 1. So just duplicate that, drag that in. And in this case, we will set the variable 1 to be 10 to give you a bit of movement, and then we will also set game state to be 2. Oh, and also after we set value in this absolute value condition, after we set variable 1 to 0, we also need to set game state to 1. If I go back into the game now, once the countdown hits 0, you can just shoot the player around the rink. So for game sprite 2, what we need in the if game is equal to 4 section of the when I start as a clone script, the first thing we're going to do is go to front layer to make sure it doesn't appear behind the ice rink, and we're going to set size to 25%. We're then going to add in a go to block. For the X side, we're going to go to pick random, negative 120 to 120. And for the Y side, we're going to set it to 20, negative 130. This will just move it to a random position. And then we're going to switch costume to pick random 1 to 12. So now we'll get a random gift in a random position on the ice rink. And then after this we want a forever loop. Within this loop we are going to add an if function. And we're going to set it to if countdown is less than 1. Do that, and then we're going to, within this, delete this clone to make sure we don't have a sprite that we don't need. After that we need another if function just after this loop, so not in the loop, just after it. Then we want to have it be, so we're going to just quickly show the game sprite one very quickly. So we want to use the sensing, and then to make sure we're touching the right sprite, we're going to use a screen picker and choose the red of the Santa's hat. So that way if we collide with the sprite, it will detect the colour and act as a collision. And within this we are going to change score by 1, create clone of myself, and then delete this clone. One mistake I did make, we're going to actually remove the create clone of game sprite 2 from the game is equal to 4 section. And instead we are going to scroll back up to the game start script. A little mistake on my part. And we're just going to create the clone of game sprite 2. Going to just create that right after we set cooldown to 20. So if I show you that, 3, 2, 1, and then we get the present, and we can then glide around and collect all of the presents to try and get as high a score as possible in the time limit. We're going to add in our sound effects now, just to add our final bit of polish, and then in the code section we're going to, for game sprite 2, we need to find that. And then in the if touching colour red section, we're going to start sound correct. That's all we need to do for sounds, because the game over sound is already in place, because we just copied the code in from the last episode. So apart from that, we are done. Hey, Hannah Mouse 1 here. Welcome to day 5 of the 5 Days of Scratchmas coding challenge, where each day I show you how to make a super simple Christmas themed minigame in Scratch. And today we're going to be making the game Cookie Catch, where you have to catch the Christmassy cookies in a little sack, whilst avoiding all of the healthy foods, like all the fruits that, who wants that around Christmas, right? So I am of course assuming that you have completed parts 1 through 4, and if you haven't, the link to those will be down below so you can follow along. But assuming that you are all caught up with us, let's jump right in with the coding. So back in game sprite 1, we're going to go to the when I receive game start script, and then we're going to scroll down to the if game is equal to 5 section. For this, what we're going to do is at the beginning, we're going to set game state to 0. We're going to set variable 1 to 0, and then wait 1 second. Then we will set game state to 1, and countdown we will set to be also 1. And then we need a repeat until loop with the condition repeat until game state is equal to 2. And then we are going to, within this loop, wait 0.5 seconds. And then we need an if statement. We need it to be if equals, and then we need this to be if game state is equal to 1. And then we're going to change countdown by 0.2. After the repeat until loop, we need a wait block, and we need this to wait 3 seconds. Then we can just copy in the set game to none broadcast main menu block from the previous section that we coded in yesterday, and that will just take us back to the main menu when the game ends. So now let's go down to the clone define script, if we can find that. Here we are. And we need to find the if game is equal to 5 section that we haven't coded in yet. I'm just going to copy all of the code from the game 4 section and just drag that in. We want it to be set this type to sack. And for that we want to switch costume to catch sack and go to x0, y minus 137. Then we want to set this type to spawner. And we could remove the switch costume to block. We don't need this to have a switch costume block. And that's actually all you need for the clone define script. That gives us the 2 sprites that we need for this. So now let's go to the when I start as a clone script right here. And if we go to the if game is equal to 5 section, we can drag in an if else function into that. For this we want if this type is equal to spawner as the condition. In this case we want to hide. And then we want a repeat loop. Repeat until not game state is equal to 1. Then we need a wait function. And we want this to be wait 2 divided by countdown seconds. So basically we have it so that countdown is set up as the difficulty meter. So throughout the game the countdown value is increasing, and that just means that the game speeds up so that the cookies drop more frequently the further into the game you get. We're just using it as a stand-in for difficulty. And after the wait block we need a create clone of game sprite 2 block. And then in this empty else function we need an if control block with it being if game state is equal to 1. And then we need a set x2 block. Under sensing we then need a mouse x as the input for that. That just means that the sack will line up with the mouse as you play the game. Now we want to click over to game sprite 2, and under the if game is equal to 5 section of that, and into that we're going to add a go-to block. We're going to set the x portion to be -200 to 200, and the y portion we're going to set to 185. Then we need an if else function. If pick random 1 to 5 is equal to 5. In this case, we will switch costume to join fruit pick random 1 to 3. We can copy the switch costume block into the else portion, but in this case we want it to be to cookie random 1 to 3. This means that there is a 1 in 5 chance for each drop to be a fruit, but obviously you can change how frequently this happens, or you can make it so that the further into the game you get, the more fruit you get compared to cookies. If you want to make the game harder, that's definitely a challenge you could try to implement if you want to do a little bit extra. After the if else function, we're going to add a repeat until, and then what we're going to do is drag in an or operator into that. For this we're going to be setting it to be if wait and repeat until y is less than -180, or touching game sprite 1. So we go to sensing, this is the first one, we can select game sprite 1 from the drop down. Within this function we need a change y by block, and we're going to set that to be countdown multiplied by -1. So as the game progresses and the countdown value increases, the cookies and fruit all drop faster and faster to make it a bit more frantic. Within this loop we also need an if function, with the condition being if not, duplicate this so we can just drag this in. We need to be if not game state is equal to 1, and within this function we're going to just delete this clone. After the repeat until loop we need an if function with an if else function within that. The condition for the if function should be if touching game sprite 1, and for the if else function it should be if so we need a contains operator, so we need it to be if costume name contains fruit. There we go. If costume name contains fruit, we need to set game state to 2. Else we need to change score by 1. And then after this, so after the if touching function, we need to delete this clone block. So let's give this a quick test, shall we? As you can see, we have the cookies and fruit falling down from the top of the screen. If we catch a fruit, game pauses for a few seconds, and then boots you back to the main menu, which is exactly what we want. So now let's quickly add in some sounds. This is going to be super easy for this one. So under game sprite 2 still, we need to, in the if touching game sprite 1 section, in the if portion of the if else function, we need to place start sound incorrect, else start sound correct. And that's all the sounds we're going to be adding for this one. Hey, Hannah Mouse 1 here. Welcome to day 6 of the 12 Days of Scratchmas challenge, where every day I show you how to make a simple Christmas themed minigame in Scratch. Today we're going to be making a game called Holiday Hunt,
from easiest to hardest. But the reward is that you get to have a good life where you are happy and surrounded by good people. And as you cross more and more problems off the list, you will progressively start to feel better. It's like this. Say you are miserable and you're
I am of course assuming that you have completed parts 1 through 5, and we will be continuing right from where we left off. So if you haven't completed those parts yet, those are linked down below so you can code along with me up to this point. But apart from that, let's dive right in. So under the game start script, we're going to scroll back up to the code we had for game 4. And we're just going to duplicate that and drag it right into the section for game 6, as we can use this as a fairly good base. We're going to change this first set block to be set variable 2 to be pick random 1 to 12. Like that. And we're also going to drag in a reset block right before this repeat loop. That's all we need for game start. So let's go down to the clone define script quickly, and we go to the if game is equal to 6 section of that. I'm going to copy this section from the if game is equal to 5 section. We need to set this type to be find, and we want to switch costume to character 1, if you can find that in this long list of characters. And in this case, we want to go to 0y40. Then we want to set this type to character. I'm going to remove this create clone myself block, and we're going to just drag in a go to block. We want to go to minus 155, y minus 25. We're going to set this val to 1. Then we're going to need a repeat loop repeating 6 times. And within this loop, we're going to create clone of myself, change this val by 1. And we're going to need a change x by block. I'm going to change x by 60. I'm going to repeat everything from the go to block and then get rid of the set this val to block. And we're going to change the y value from minus 25 to minus 85. Drag that onto the end. Then we can drag this into the if game is equal to 6 section. I'll show you that this creates all of the characters that will be displayed. The next thing I want to do is find the reset script, which is just under here. And in the if game is equal to 6 section, in this section what we're going to do is we're just going to go to the variables tab and drag in a delete all of game info 1 block, duplicate that, and then set it to be game info 2, so we delete all of both lists. And then we're going to add 1 to game info 1. Like that. Then we will set variable 1 to 2. Now we're going to need a repeat loop which repeats 11 times. I'm just going to copy one of these insert blocks from the thing we did for game 3, and we're going to insert variable 1, and we're going to leave this the rest of this. It still says pick random 1 to length of game info 1 plus 1 of game info 1. Then after that we want to change variable 1 by 1. Then we want to set variable 1 to be 1. Then we need another repeat loop. And we want to repeat 12 times. Then back to variables, we want to add thing to game in. What we need to do is add variable 1 to game info 2. And again, we need to then change variable 1 by 1 within this loop. So basically what this does is it shuffles all the characters, so the characters are in a random order as they move around the screen. And then the second list just tells you which characters you've already found, so that way it doesn't repeat the same character twice and the characters disappear once you've selected them, which we do need to code in right now. So now we're going to go on to the if game is equal to 6 part of the when I started the clone script. And for this section we need an if else function. And for this we want it to be if this type is equal to character. And then in this case, we want to switch costume to join character. And then we need to go to the variables. We need an item 1 of game info 1 block on the other side. And we want this to be item this val of game info 1. Then we need a wait until block being set to wait until game state is equal to 1. Then we need a repeat until loop with it being set to repeat until not game state is equal to 1. Then we need an if else function in that. We're doing if y is equal to minus 25. So we get the y position input from the motion section. And then we need another if else function in that with it being set to if x position instead of y position. So we need to go back to the motion tab, get the x position block. If x position is equal to negative 155. Then we want to add a repeat loop into the if portion of that. So to repeat 20 times. Then go back to motion. We need to change y by negative 3. Then we need an if else function. So if game info 2 contains this val, we can copy this switch costume 2 block into the if portion of that. And we can also add in a show block, else hide. Then in the else portion, we can just duplicate this repeat until block. But what we're going to do is remove the change y by block that we have here and replace it with a change x by negative 3, into there. And then into this empty else function, we're going to do is I'm just going to copy this entire thing. Drag that in. I'm going to change this from minus 155 to positive 145. Change the negative 3 and the change y by block to positive 3. And in the else function, we're going to change the x by block to be also positive 3. And then in this final empty else function down here, we need another if else function. And for this, we need an equals operator. And we're going to be if game state is equal to 1. And we're going to copy this switch costume 2 block. We're going to be character variable 2. So join character variable 2, else we hide. And one thing we need to do that I forgot to do earlier, if we go back up to the game start script, we just need to remove the create clone of game sprite 2 block that I forgot to take out earlier. So let's give this a quick test, shall we? Let's see how this works. Great, we now have all the characters moving around the screen and we have the one that we need to find in the center. But we do need to make it so that we can actually interact with these things. So let's go down to the when this sprite is clicked script. So for this, we're going to need an if function in the if game's equal to 6 section. I need this to be if this type is equal to character. So we can just copy in one of these equals things. This type equal to character. Like that. We need another if function in that with the condition being another equals operator. For the left hand side, we need it to have if item this val of game info 1 is equal to variable 2. Then we need to go down here and add in a delete item 1 of game info 1 function, but we need it to be item tag of thing of game info 1, and we need it to be item tag of this val of game info 1 of game info 1. So this will just delete this item from the list. We need to change score by 1. Then we need an if function for this, with the condition being if length of game info 2 is equal to 0. And sorry, this should be game info 2, not game info 1, sorry. So delete item game info 2. So if length of game info 2 is equal to 0, wait 1 second, and then add an if function if countdown is greater than 0. Just like that. Drag that in. We need to change score by 10. change countdown by 10, just to give you a bit more time so you don't run out of time for the second round. And we also need to drag in a reset block. Then after the if length of game info 2, so after this if function here, we need to drag in a set block for the variable. So we need to set variable 2 to be item. And then we for the other side we need another. So we need it to be item of game info 2 into the function of that. And then we need a pick random block, pick random 1 to length of game info 2. So this should read in total, set variable 2 to item, item pick random 1 to length of game info 2 of game info 2 of game info 1. So let's give this a quick test. And you can see you can get rid of the characters by clicking on them. As you can see the score is ticking up nicely just as we like. It's all looking pretty good so far. Let's see. And then it gives you an extra 10 seconds and resets the game so you can go into round number 2, which is exactly what we want. So now let us add in some sound effects just to polish everything off nicely for this game, shall we? So with just the only sound effect that I want to add for this bit is in this section. It says, like in the beginning of the if item this value variable 2 is equal to variable 2 section of the when the sprite is clicked script, you can play sound pop 1. And then just to make this a bit more interesting, because you're going to be hearing this sound a lot, I'm going to add in a join operator and set this to be actually pop pick random 1 to 3, because there's 3 pop sounds and it will just cycle between them randomly, just to add a bit more visual audio interest. And then in the if length of game info 2 section is equal to 2 section, we're going to start sound correct at the beginning of that. Hey, HannahMouse1 here. Welcome to day 7 of the 12 Days of Scratchmas challenge, where every day I show you how to make a simple Christmas themed minigame in Scratch. Today I'm going to show you how to make the game Sack Shuffle, where you get shown which sack a gift is in, it hides, and then it shuffles the sacks and you have to follow it to make sure you click the right one that has the gift in to get a point, else it ends the game. This is, of course, like every day, assuming that you have completed parts 1 through 6, so if you haven't, that is linked down below, but otherwise, let's jump right in, shall we? So back in our game sprite 1, we're going to go straight to this when I receive game start script, and we're going to go right down to the game is equal to 7 section, so the next section that we haven't filled in yet. So for this, what we're going to do is at the start, we're going to set game state to 0, then we're going to wait for 3 seconds and then set game state to 1. Then we want a repeat until loop with the condition repeat until game is equal to none. So just type none. And within this loop we're going to drag in the reset custom block, and then we're going to wait 0.5 seconds. And we want these 2 blocks to be in a repeat loop that repeats 10 times. And after this, we want to set game state to 2. So after this repeat loop, but still in the repeat until function. And then we want a wait until game state is equal to 1. That's all we need for the start script. This basically what this does is it sets the game state to 0, so it shows you which gift you have, which sack has the gift in. And then it shuffles 10 times, so it moves 10 times, and then waits for you to select a sack, and then repeats, unless the game is none, at which point the script ends because you've been sent back to the main menu. But now let's go down and find the clone define script. Scrolling. Within this we need a set this val block, and we're going to set this val to 1. We're then going to drag in a go to block, with it being set to 0 y55, and then create clone for myself. We can duplicate these 3 blocks. We're going to set this val to 2, set the x to 65, and the y to -30. I can copy these final 3 blocks, change this val to 3, and change the x to -65. So I'll quickly show you that. you can see you have the 3 clones on screen. Obviously it's the wrong costumes right now because we haven't given them any programming to know which costume to switch to, but we will fix that shortly. But first I quickly want to go to the reset define script, if we can find that, and find this final if game is equal to 7 section. Within this we want to add a delete all of game info 1 block. Then we're going to add 1 to game info 1. Then we're going to insert 2 at pick random 1 to length of game info 1 plus 1. You can copy that from one of the other sections, we've used it a lot. And then we can duplicate that and change the 2 to a 3. So that's all we need for the reset block. So now let's find the when I start as a clone script right here. First we need an if else function with an or operator in the condition space. For one condition we need it to be if game state is equal to 0. And for the other we need it to be if game state is equal to 3. In this case we want to set size to 100%, and then we're going to drag in an if else function and set this to be if this val is equal to 1, and in this case we are going to switch costume to sack 1, else switch costume to sack 13. In the else portion of this we are also going to switch costume to sack 13. Then we need an if else function with the condition if game state is equal to 1. We then need an if else function in the if portion of this, with it being if item tag of thing in game info 1, and we can replace thing with this val. Then we can add we're going to add a glide block, with it being glide 0.5 seconds to 0y55. Then we can duplicate this and set it to be if item tag of this val in game info 1 is equal to 2, and in this case we will glide to 65 minus 30, and else we will glide to negative 65 minus 30. These will be negative, sorry. There we go. Then in this final empty else function that we have here, we need an if operator or event control block, sorry. We need this to be if game state is equal to 2. Then we need an if else function, and we're going to use if touching mouse pointer. And in the if portion, we are going to set size to 110%. Else, and I want these sacks, when you're able to click them, to be pulsing. So what we're going to do for this is we're going to drag in the set size block, and then we're going to add an addition operator into that, with one size being 100. Then the other side we're going to drag in a multiplication operator and set one side to be 3. And for the other side we need a sign of operator. And then for that we want it to be timer times timer. There we go. Timer times 300. So if you don't know, a sine generates a curve. So as the timer increases, this will constantly be getting bigger and smaller. But that's actually all we need for the when I start as a clone script. If we quickly have a look at this, you can see that the sacks all start to shuffle, and then they start pulsing, indicating that you're able to click them. But obviously right now clicking it does nothing, so we need to fix that. So go down to the when this sprite is clicked script down here. For this we need an if function with the condition if game state is equal to 2. In this we want to set game state to 3. Then we need an if else function with the condition being if this val is equal to 1. In this case we want to change score by 1. Wait 1 second. Then set game state to 1. Else, we're going to wait 1 second, set game to none, and broadcast main menu to end the game if you get it wrong. Let's give this a quick play test, shall we? So you can see if you get it right, you get a point. You'll follow it again. Let's deliberately get it wrong this time. Oh no, I got it wrong, and it takes you back to the main menu. So let's add in a few sound effects. First off, still in the when the sprite is clicked script, let's add a correct sound into the if portion of the if this val is equal to 1 section, and an incorrect into the beginning of the else portion of that. Then let's go up to the game start script, and in the repeat loop, right where it has the reset block, let's add a page 1 sound. And I think that's all that we need in terms of sound effects. Hey, Hannah Mouse 1 here. Welcome to day 8 of the 12 Days of Scratchmas challenge, where every day I show you how to make a super simple Christmas themed minigame in Scratch. For day 8 we're going to be making the game Reindeer Run, which is a Flappy Bird style game where you have to click the screen to help the reindeer navigate the sleigh around the clouds, and if you hit a cloud or go off the screen, then you lose. Like every day, I'm assuming you've completed all the parts up through now, which are linked down below if you haven't, so make sure you've done all of those, but other than that, let's jump right in. So under our game start script in our game sprite 1, the first thing we are going to do is set game state to 0, and we're also going to set variable 1 to 0. Then we're going to wait until, and we're going to add in another wait until block, so we have 2 wait until blocks. In the first one, we're going to drag in a not operator, and then a mouse down sensing block into both of the input spaces. So that way the game will start when the player clicks the mouse. So after this, we want to set game state to 1. Then we want a repeat until loop, and we can copy in the game is equal to none thing that we used yesterday. Within this, we want to, again, wait until mouse down. Then we need an if function with if game state is equal to 1. And then we want to set variable 1 to 10. And then after that, we want to wait until not mouse down, so just after the if function. And basically what this does is the game starts, it waits until the player clicks, and then after that, every time the player clicks, the sleigh will bounce up. So the Y velocity of the sleigh is determined by variable 1. But now let's move on to the clone define script, shall we? Scroll down until you find that. So what we need for this is switch costume 2. We want to find sleigh 1. There we go. And then we want to set this type to sleigh. Then we need a go-to block with the position being negative 126. Negative, and then that should be Y0. Then create clone of myself. Then we can duplicate these 4, and we're going to switch costume 2, label 1, set this type to spawner, and change the values in the go-to block to be 0.75. And that's all we need for the clone define script. Now let's go to the when I start as a clone script. Right here, the section for game is equal to 8. And in this we want an if else function with the condition if this type is equal to spawner. And we want another if else function in that with the condition being if game state is equal to 0. And in this we want to show, else we want to hide. Then we want a wait until block. And we want it to be wait until, and then we need a division operator in that with it being set to 5 divided by, then we want an addition, score plus 1. Then, after that, we want to create clone of game sprite 2. So this will just basically be in charge of spawning all the clouds that will move across the screen that the reindeer has to avoid. But in the else function, we need an if function with the condition if not game state is equal to 0. Then we're going to drag in a set costume 2 block, and then we need a join operator, join sleigh. Then we want a plus operator on the other side, +1. And then we're going to add in a mod operator. What mod means is when the left side is divided by the right side, what the remainder is. So if you were to divide, say, 4 by 3, it would be 1 remainder 1, so mod would be 1. And what we want for this is mod of round timer times 5. So times 5, timer, mod 4. This will just animate the reindeer, so it has 4 costumes that will just cycle through based on the timer. It saves having to program in the animation with a separate script. Then we will change variable 1 by -1. So this will just basically be what the gravity of the sleigh is. Then you want an if function, with it being if variable 1 is less than -10, then set variable 1 to -10. Just to stop it going really fast if you start moving from the very top of the screen. Then we want to change y after this by variable 1. Then we need an if function. If touching game sprite 2, set game state to 2. And then we need another if function, doing if y position is less than -180, set game to none. And broadcast main menu. Oh, and I put this in the wrong place. This should actually be under here, sorry. Alright, so let's give this a quick test, shall we? So as you can see now, as I click, the reindeer sleigh moves up and down. But the only thing that we're missing are the clouds that need to move across the screen. So if we go to the Game Sprite 2 section, under this script in the game is equal to 8 section, we need to switch costume to cloud. Then we need a go to block, with it being set to go to x275. Then we need a pick random for the y, with it being pick random -130 to 130. So -130 to +130. Then we need a repeat until loop with an OR operator is the condition, with it being set to x is less, so x position is less than -250, or touching game sprite 1, change x by -5. After this we need an if function with an and, so we can copy in the x position is less than -250, and we need an if game state is equal to 1 in the other side. Then we need to change score by 1. And then delete this clone at the end of all of this. So what this means is that the clouds will spawn in, move across the screen, and if they get all the way to the other end of the screen without touching the player, then you get a point. So let's give this a quick test to make sure everything is working. So you can see a cloud spawning in, goes to the edge of the screen, and you get a point. You get another cloud, another, and as you can see, as the score increases, the number of clouds you get also increases to make the game progressively harder. If you hit a cloud, then suddenly you can no longer click, and that ends the game. So shall we add in a few sound effects? Go to Game Sprite number 1, if we go up to the game start script, and in the if game is equal to 8 section, when we set variable 1 to 10, we're going to start sound, join, pop, pick random 1 to 3, which, as you remember, just varies the pop sound. We used it the other day as well. And then if we go down to the when I started a clone script, in the if touching game sprite 2 section, I'm going to add in an if condition to this. And then set it to be if game state is equal to 1. And then place sound incorrect. So that way it only triggers this sound if it's a fail one and not you happen to be colliding it once you're already falling off the screen. Hey, Hannah1 here. Welcome to day 9 of the 12 Days of Scratchmas challenge, where every day I show you how to make a Christmassy themed minigame in Scratch. And today, for part 9, we are making the game Snowball Shot, where you have to click at the right time to aim the snowball so that they hit the different targets. I am of course assuming that you have completed days 1 through 8, and if you haven't, those will be linked down below, so you can catch up to where we are now. But if you've already done that, let's jump right in with the coding. As always, we're starting in game sprite 1, and we need to find our game start script, which is right up here, right near the top, and we need to fill in the if game is equal to 9 section today. So what I'm actually going to do is just copy in what we have for game 8, change this variable 1 to actually be countdown, which we're going to set to 5. Then we're going to get rid of the wait until mouse down one, so it's wait until not mouse down, and we can get rid of the set game state as well. So we still need the repeat until loop, but we can remove the if function from between these two blocks and replace it with set game state to 1 and change countdown by -1. And then we can drag this in. This will control the shooting of the snowballs. With the countdown in this case, instead of being a timer, it's actually how many snowballs you have left. But now let's go on to the clone define script, scrolling down until you find that. So first we want to switch costume to, we want to find the aim costume, there we are. Then we want to set this type to aim. Go to 0, -142 and create clone of myself. Then we want to switch costume to target. Target 1, sorry. I want to switch costume to target 1. Then we want to set this type to target. And set this val to 1. Then we need to go to x -150, y -10. Then we want to repeat 3 times loop, as so. Drag this in, sorry, it should be in there. I want to create clone of myself and change x by 150. Then we're going to set this val to 2 and go to x -180, y 45. And then we're going to create clone of myself and also create clone of game sprite 2. Just drag that in. Have a quick look. You can see that we have all the sprites. We have the aim for where the snowball will be. We have three targets down here and then 1 up here. And we still need to sort what game sprite 2 is doing. But for now, we have all the sprites that we need cloned in. So let's go to the when I start as a clone script. So first we need an if-else function in this with the condition if this type is equal to aim. Then we need an if-else function in that with the condition if game state is equal to 0. Then we need a show block. And then from under the motions tab, we want to point in direction. Then for this, we need a multiplication operator being multiplied by 85. Then we need a sign of operator, which if you remember from yesterday, generates a curve. Then we need a sign of, we need a multiplication with one side being timer. Then for the other, we need another multiplication, with it being one side being 30 and the other being score plus 1. And then we want to set variable 1 to direction, which you can get from the motions one down here, just the direction variable. So as you can see now, the arrow starts to swing backwards and forwards, and as your score gets higher, this will happen faster and faster, making the game harder and harder as your score increases. But for this empty else section that we have here, we need an if function, with it being if this type is equal to target. And then within this we need an if else function. If this val is equal to 2 is the condition. Then we want to set x to, and I'm just going to copy this pointer from the point of direction thing and get rid of the score plus 1 section. So we need to be sine of timer times 20 times 180. Then we need an if function. If touching game sprite 2, drag that in from the sensing tab, change score by 5. Else, and we can just copy the touching game sprite 2, else if touching game sprite 2, change score by 1. Oh sorry, actually mistake on my part, this section here, this actually needs to be in the else, this second else function, and this needs to just hide. There we go. And now you can see we have it so that the snowman at the top goes backwards and forwards across the screen, making it a harder target to hit, and it gives you a higher score as a result. But now let's go to the game sprite 2, and in the game is equal to 9 section. The first thing we want to do is switch costume to ball. Then we need a forever loop, and within this loop we need an if else function with the condition if game state is equal to 0. And in the if portion, go to 0 minus 142 and point in direction variable 1. Else, we want the move 5 steps block. Then we need an if function. Then we need an or operator in that. So or, so if it's sensing touching edge, so the edge of the screen, or touching game sprite 1. Then we need an if else function. So if countdown is equal to 0, so if you're out of snowballs, hide, wait 1 second, then set game to none, and broadcast main menu. Else, set game state to 0. Let's give this a quick test. As you can see, you can shoot the ball and the score goes up when you hit the target, and the countdown value goes down. And if you miss, it just goes to the edge of the screen. You don't get any extra score for that. And if you hit the extra target, you can see that the score jumped up quite a lot. And because the score jumped up so much, the arrow is now moving a lot faster. And if I hit my final shot, then it waits 1 second. And this should be broadcast main menu. Not game start, so broadcast main menu. There we go. That is all working as it should be now. So let's add in some sound effects. So let's go back to game sprite 1, and under the game start script, after the wait until mouse down block, we can start sound pop pick random 1 to 3. And then back under game sprite 2, and then if we go to the when I start as a clone script, and scroll right down to the section on game 9. There we are. In the touching game sprite 2 if functions, we can just drag in a start sound correct block. And that's what we're going to do for sounds, which does bring us to the end of this project. Hey, Hannah Mouse One here. Welcome to day 10 of the 12 Days of Scratchmas challenge, where every day I show you how to make a simple Christmas themed minigame in Scratch. For day 10, we're going to be making the game Bauble Bounce, where you have to guide a bauble using the mouse to land on a moving platform. I am of course assuming that you've completed parts 1 through 9, and if you haven't, they are linked down below so you can get nice and caught up before jumping into today. But if you've already done that, let's dive right in. So let's start with our game start script. Let's scroll to find that. It's right up the top. Our code is getting very long now. You've done so much. I am so proud of you. But here we are. So we're in the game equal to 10 section. First we are going to drag in a set block. We're going to set game state to 0. Set variable 1 also to 0, and set countdown to 3. Then we need a repeat 3 times loop, where you wait 1 second, then change countdown by -1, and then set game state to 1. And that's literally all that you need for this one. All this does is it waits 3 seconds, then starts the game. So let's find our clone define script, shall we? Scroll right down to that. What I'm actually going to do for this is copy the first part of the game is equal to 9.1 and remove everything after the first 4 blocks. We're going to switch costume to bauble and set this type to bauble. And then just drag that in. Actually, sorry, this should be costume to platform, not bauble. So switch costume to platform and switch type to platform. Then we can duplicate this, and this one should be bauble. So we need to switch costume to bauble, set this type to bauble. We need to set this val to 0. And we want to change the Y value of the go to block to be 30. Now you can see that we have the bauble and we have the platform. We just need to get them to be doing things. So if we go to our when I start as a clone script, which is right up here, we need an if else function with the condition being if this type is equal to bauble. Then we need an if function with it being if game state is equal to 1. Then you want to change variable 1 by -2. Variable 1 is acting as the Y motion of the bauble. Then we need an if function. If variable 1 is less than -20, as so, then set variable 1 to -20. This just caps the Y velocity of the bauble. Then we want a change Y by block, change Y by variable 1, and set X to, we need a division operator with it being divided by 2, then we need an addition operator, so X position, sensing, mouse X. So what this will do is it will just make it so that the bauble will almost smoothly move towards the mouse. Then we need an if function. Then we need a touching color sensor. And we're going to use the eyedropper to select the green of the platform. Then we will set variable 1 to 25 and change score by 1. Then we need another if function. If Y position is less than -170, set game to none, and broadcast main menu to end the game if you fall out of bounds. Broadcast main menu, there we go. So I should set game to none. So let's give this a quick test, shall we? As you can see. Let's give this a very quick play test. So as you can see, the bauble now falls and bounces on the platform, but if I move it off the platform and fall off, it takes you back to the main menu. But right now it's not much of a game, is it? So we need to get the platform moving as well. So in this empty else function, we want an if function with the condition if this type is equal to platform. And if else function in that. Then we need a less than operator in the condition space. And then for the left hand side, we're going to use the absolute value operator, which if you remember from the other day means how far from 0 a number is. So -5 and 5 both have the absolute value of 5. And then we need a take away operator into that, with it being x position minus this val is less than 3. It should actually be 3 plus score, sorry. So it's less than 3 plus score. Then we want to set this val to pick random minus 160 to 160. Else change x by x position minus this val, we can copy that from here. Then we need a divided by, then we can copy the absolute value one. So it's x position minus this val divided by absolute value of x position of this val. What this will do is if the value is negative, then it will give you -1. If it's positive, it will give you +1. Then we need 2 multiplication operators with, so we need this in the first condition. The second condition should be 3 plus score, and the final one should be -1. We can just drag all of this into the change x by block. So now if we have a quick looky-loo, you can see that the platform moves around, so you have to figure out, keep timing, and as you get higher in score, it gets faster and faster, making it harder and harder until you inevitably lose. So now we're just going to add in a quick sound effect. So in the if this type is equal to bauble section, we're going to start sound incorrect if the Y position goes less than 170, and in the touching color green section, we're going to touch color pop. Sorry about the construction noise in the background if you can hear that. You start sound joined pop, pick random 1, 2, 3. Hey, Hannah Mouse 1 here. Welcome to day 11 of the 12 Days of Scratchmas challenge, where every day I show you how to make a super simple Christmas themed minigame in Scratch. For day 11, we are going to be making the game Odd Elf Out, where you have to quickly click the elf that doesn't match the others as fast as possible, so you get as many done in the time limit. I'm of course assuming that you've completed parts 1 through 10, and if you haven't, they are linked down below. But if you're all caught up, let's jump right into the coding. Like always, let's start with the game start script. And what I'm actually going to do is go up to where we have game is equal to 4. And I'm just going to copy the entire section from in there, because what we need for today is very similar to what we had for game 4. So we can just drag this down to the game is equal to 11 section of the code. Right down here, as you can see. So for this, you want to set variable 1 to pick random 1 to 9 at the beginning. We want to remove the create clone of game sprite 2. And we want to drag in a repeat 20 times loop. Then we're going to drag in the wait 1 second and change countdown by -1 block. Then drag all of this onto the end, remove that, and attach this. And then just like that, we can drag this straight into the game is equal to 11 section. So what this will do is it will select a random elf to be the incorrect one, give you 3 seconds of grace time, then it will start a countdown of 20 seconds to see how many times you can find the odd elf out in that time. But now let's move on to the clone define script. Way down here, we are all the way down to the game is equal to 11 section. Then we want to switch costume to, scroll down till we find elf question mark. So then we want to set this type to elf, set this val to 1, and set Y to 30. Get rid of the create this quick on myself block. Then we need a repeat loop, repeating 3 times. And within this loop, we want to set X to -75. Then we need another repeat 3 times loop. Create clone of myself. Change this val by 1. change x by 75. Then after this repeat 3 times loop, we want to change y by negative 65. Drag that in. As you can see, we now have a grid of 9 elves. Now let's go back up to the when I start as a clone. And what we want for this is an if-else function. With it being if game state is equal to 1. And then we need an if-else function in that, with it being if this val is equal to variable 1. In this case, we want to switch costume to elf 2, right down here. Else, we want to switch costume to elf 1. And in the empty else function here, we want to simply switch costume to elf question mark. And that's actually all we need for games when I start as a clone script. So quickly show you that. Then the countdown starts and they're all blacked out. And then they light up and you can see that we have the 919 elves with one being different. We need to make it so that clicking on the incorrect elf causes the score to go up and the elf to change. So find the when this sprite is clicked script. Scroll right down to the game is equal to 11 section. Then we need an if function. And drag an AND operator into that. So if game state is equal to 1, put that in, is equal to 1, and this val is equal to variable 1. So if it is the incorrect elf, change score by 1. Then we need a repeat until loop. Then we need a not operator in the condition, with it being not this val is equal to variable 1, just copy that in. Then set variable 1 to pick random 1 to 9, and that just means that the same elf won't be selected twice in a row. Give this a quick test. 3, 2, 1. You can see the elf now switches out, the score ticks up and up and up and up. Super simple. And as you can see, all of that is working just as intended. And when the timer hits 0, pause, and it takes you back to the main menu. So all we need to do now is add a couple sound effects. So if we go to sound, then in this section here where you change score by 1, let's play sound correct. And that's actually all that we need to do. Hey, Hannah Mouse 1 here. Welcome to the 12th and final day of the 12 Days of Scratchmas challenge, where every day I show you how to make a super simple mini game in Scratch. And for part 12, we're going to be making the game Can't Catch Me, where you play a gingerbread man and have to make sure that he avoids the bakers and doesn't get baked. I'm assuming that you've completed all the parts up till now, and if you haven't, that is linked down below so you can do all of those before doing this one. But if you've already done that, let's jump right in. So for the final time, go to the start game message receiver, and in this final empty else function that we have down here, what we want to do is set game state to 0. And set variable 1 to 1. Then we need a wait block, waiting 1 second. Then we want to create clone of game sprite 2. Then we need a repeat until loop, repeating until game is equal to none. Then we want to wait until mouse down. And then we need an if-else function. If variable 1 is equal to 1, then we want to set variable 1 to 2, else set variable 1 to 1. Then we need another wait until block after this if-else function. Then to not mouse down. This will just allow you to switch the gingerbread man from one side of the screen to the other, and that's all that we need for the game start script. So now let's go to the clone define script, scroll down until you find that. First we need to go to 0, 0 block, so go to x0, y0, switch costume to lane, set this type to lane, set this type to lane, and create clone of myself. drag that in. Then we can copy these 4 blocks, change the X value to -70 and the Y value to -130. Switch costume to gingerbread 1, set this type to gingerbread. And just drag that in. So if we have a quick look, we now have the gingerbread man here. And all we need to do now is to make it so that he flips to one side of the screen to the other when you click. So let's go up to the when I start as a clone. So all that we need for this is an if statement. And we want the condition to be if this type is equal to gingerbread. And then we want an if else statement in that. There being if variable 1 is equal to 1. Quickly drag that in. Like so. In this case we want to set X position to -70, else we want to set X to +70. Now if you have a quick look at this, you can see that as you click you can get the gingerbread to flip from one side of the screen to the other. And now all that we need to do is have the bakers come down from the top of the screen. So for that let's go to Game Sprite 2. So in the game is equal to 12 section, we need a switch costume to chef block and a set Y to 188 block. Then we need an if else function, there being if pick random 1 to 2 is 1, then set Y, then set X to -70, else set X to 70. So this way it lines up with the gingerbread man. So then we need a repeat until loop. So let's drag that in under there with an OR operator and a less than operator in one side. Will this be if Y position is less than -170 or touching Game Sprite 1. Then we need a change Y by block and a multiplication operator in that. And then addition in one side, so it needs to be change Y by score plus 2 multiplied by -1. Then we need an if else function with the condition being if Y position is less than -170, we can just copy that in from there. Then we want to change score by 1, create clone of myself and delete this clone. Else, wait 1 second, set game to none, drag that in, game none, and broadcast main menu. End the game if the player collides with one of the bakers. Let's give this a quick test, shall we? As you see, the baker's coming down from this side. You can hop over to this side to avoid him. Yes, and as you can see, as your score goes up, the bakers get faster and faster. It looks like they're all one of them on that side right now. What's happening? Why are they all on there? Oh, there we go. Oh, now one's on this side, you have to flip over. Back on this side. They're really favouring that side, aren't they? It is completely random. Collided it, it pauses, and then it just ends the game. So what we're going to do is add in some sound effects. So in this else part of the function, when you collide with it, you're going to start sound incorrect. And if we go back to Game Sprite 1, if we go up to the in the game start script, we're going to wait until mouse down, then we're going to start sound page 1. And that's all that we need to do. So you have completed all 12 days of the 12 Days of Scratchmas. Well done, I'm so proud of you. If you like the series, then please like and subscribe. It lets me know that there's something to see more of. I want to know what you think of this like in front of the camera style of tutorial while I'm coding live whilst recording with you instead of the pre-recorded style I normally do. I'd love to hear your feedback on it. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas, and apart from that, I'll see you next week with another video. Bye!